Right.
Okay, so welcome everybody, and to this, I think, the 26th PTA Zoom presentation. Before we go any farther, if you'd like to mute yourself, that'd be fantastic. Apart from the speaker, which would not be fantastic if you did that.
I could use sign language, couldn't I?
That would be a first, Malcolm.
That would be a first, wouldn't it? Yes.
So Malcolm, as you may have guessed, is our speaker this evening, and he's talking about the evolution of the picture postcard and aspects of Edwardian London. So I'm looking forward to that as a postcard collector myself. I think that could be quite exciting. But before we get on to the main act, could I just mention a couple of things? The next Zoom meeting or next Zoom meetings, the next one is Wednesday, the 17th of May, when Charles, I saw Charles somewhere tonight. Charles is doing a presentation on chess, which should be quite interesting. And on Saturday, the 17th of June, Michelle Bresco is doing her St. Bernard's presentation. So looking forward to that as well. Could I also give a small plug, and I hope this is okay, Andrew, make a small plug for a virtual one-page competition with free entry for the Moroccan people. They have in the past entered ours, so we feel obliged to enter theirs. Andrew's got all the details, but it's particularly pleasing is the rules. They actually mention us as being the rule makers and are using the same system as ourselves. So I'm going to put a page in, but if you want to have a chat to Andrew, he's got all the details. And I think there's another couple of weeks to go before the closing date. Anyway, apart from that, shall we go to the star of the evening, Malcolm? And,
oh God! Right.
Over to you, and yes, the best luck.
Fingers crossed. Then there we go. Oh, try do it. Hopefully you can all see that. Now let's see if I can go. Oh God, where's slideshow? Slideshow from the beginning. Okay, there we go. Can you all see that?
I can't see anything, I must admit, but
you're not sharing your screen.
I think
no, you're right. Oh God,
just a moment.
No, you're right.
Try it now. Would you try it now?
Hang on, let me get rid of that. She's absolutely right. I didn't go share screen first.
Yeah. You were just teasing us, weren't you, Malcolm?
Yeah, I'm just. Oh God, I see. There we go. Share screen. Screen. Blub, blub, blub.
Yeah.
You're there.
That it? Ah,
yeah.
Thank heavens for that.
Super.
Right. Jolly good show. Right. Okay. Right. That's the title page. Really very exciting. Let's go to the next one. This is where the story starts for postcards. Heinrich von Stephan, and he worked for the Prussian post office, and he thought it might be a jolly good idea to have what he called an open postal sheet of stiff card with just an address on one side and a short message on the other side. And part of the idea was that it would be cheaper than a letter. Unfortunately, the Prussian post office didn't see eye to eye with him on this one. For those who collect thematically, he appears on quite a number of things. So he had the idea. The Prussian post office went, no. But then later, in 1869, a Dr. Emanuel Hermann published an article about this very thing, about novel means of correspondence, and suggested that it would be a jolly good idea, and it would be at 2 kreuzers postage rate instead of 5 kreuzers, i.e. cheaper. And there he is on a postcard as well. So let's get on with the thing. So Austria decided to do it. The Austrian Post Office issued the first postcards on the 1st of October, 1869. And of course, because it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you get the postcards in 2 languages. obviously German and Hungarian. So there's them. I'm still looking for some cards for some early dates of usage of those. But what was amazing was, considering how negative the Prussian post office had been, 3 million cards were mailed in the first 3 months. Mostly businesses who found it a very cheap way of sending information backwards and forwards from salespeople in the field and things like that, and also sending information to customers. So they were the very first. Following that, the very next year, and they picked up on it quite quickly, because the British Post Office decided to do this back in, I think, I can't remember, relatively early in 1870, and De La Rue were activated to produce these 2 cards. They're interesting in themselves. So there were 2 sizes, for reasons best known to the post office. Now, John Scott says that virtually all of the first day of use postcards are the larger size, and they were issued to a lot of companies for pre-printing. They were printed in sheets of, I think it was 20, and they were sent out to companies to pre-print the backs of them with whatever they wanted to print on the back of them. So come the 1st of October, they were all poised and ready to use them. The postage was half the letter rate, and as it says here, 675,000 was sold on the first day, and 76 million in the first year. That goes some idea to show how popular these things were. And of course they were cheap. So, right, there we go, next one. And what a lot of companies started to do was, apart from just printing simple stuff on the back, they started to put additional images on the back. So we begin to see little images on the back, and in some cases quite pretty little images. So this is a Edward Edward Foster and Sons, and actually a lovely little engraving of their head office on the back. These are slightly more difficult to find, I have to be honest, but this sort of was the beginnings of postcards in a way, although England wasn't that dynamic in this respect. Now, the post office also, from 17th of June 1872, private companies could print their own cards, and then they had to take them up to the stamping office and get the embossed stamps put on them. And this is one example. There aren't that many examples of these. This was not a popular idea at all compared to the pre-printed halfpenny postcards, but some of them are quite pretty. Now you'll notice that the British Post Office, there were these 2 small sizes. Now the UPU decided that actually the size of the postcard ought to be standardized, certainly for Europe and overseas, at 5.5 by 3.5. So the British Post Office had to produce these larger size cards for overseas use to conform to UPU rules, but the internal cards stayed the same size, which became important later on, or a consideration later on. So across Europe, they already had these large standard size cards. And in 1885, the Austrian Post Office sanctioned cards with small illustrations on them. There was a degree of pressure on the post office because tourism was starting to take off, and a lot of people could see the potential for the postcard. And this is effectively. This is the earliest one I've currently got. They're not that easy to find, the very early ones. This is a relatively typical example. Some chap discovered how to effectively produce these pictures and print it, being able to print them on the back. So this is these are the first postcards as we know it. You'll notice there's still the image is on the back, the writing is still, the message is still on the back, and the front is only for the address. So Austria really started the whole process rolling, and then particularly across the German-speaking significant portion of the continent, these things took off. So these are some slightly later ones, and classic ones like this one here this is a dam and a lake behind a dam, but it is a tourist attraction, and people went to visit it to see the wonders of this dam. And there was a postcard produced for the wonders of the dam, and cities had postcards. So these are from 1895. So you're beginning to see this kind of volume of postcards creeping in from about 1890, and certainly by 1895 they're quite widespread. Now, while Austro-Hungary had these illustrated cards from about 1885, France hung out until 1889, and then they had the Universal Exhibition, and the company that ran the Eiffel Tower decided that it would be a good idea to have a postcard that people could have when they visited the Eiffel Tower. And they, in fact, charged Leon Charles Libanier to produce 5 engravings of various views of the Eiffel Tower, which were then reproduced onto postcards. And although the exhibition ran from the 1st of May to the 6th of November, the cards, hang on, and this is where I have to, no, I've got my crib sheets, and I haven't got that one. Isn't that typical? It was only about August that these cards were issued, and they were exceptionally popular. Well, as you can see, 57,000 sold in the first 20 days, and they continued to be sold after the exhibition closed. So you can see them from into the 1890s with various versions of this cachet. And again, quite pretty cards. Again, still illustration on the back, writing on the back, address on the front. That's right. Now, Europe had these since, well, Austria, Germany, etc., had had them since about 1885. The British Post Office, in its usual fashion, was incredibly reluctant to move to privately printed cards. This was partly due to de la Rue, who fought quite a strong rearguard action because, of course, they had a monopoly on the production of these of postcards up to this point. And as you can see, it was millions a year. But finally, the post office agreed to allow privately printed cards, and these came in 1885. In fact, the first one, I believe, was produced by a chap in Glasgow in about August of 1885. It's the first known one. So, and I think these are very pretty. This is that most of them have these little vignettes. again, we're still with the writing on the back. Here's another one, rather mimicking the style of some of the ones on the continent. You'll notice also that by this time, most of the illustrations are in colour. The early period in the early 1890s, 1880s, 1890s, the vignettes were all black and white. But lithography, particularly printers in Germany, developed the technology for producing these cards, and they're very, very attractive. Oh, well, I think they're very attractive anyway. Here's another one, the Liverpool landing stage. This is quite a late usage, as you'll see in a minute. During this period also, we start to see photolithography, proper photographs, black and white images, still on these small, in the UK, still on these small quart-sized cards. And you begin to see one of the wonderful things about these kind of images is they're a little segment of social history. You can see Blackfriars Bridge here is absolutely jam-packed with wagons, horse-drawn wagons of all sorts. And here we have a fairly peaceful scene with just a hansom cab and something else. Somebody's out there. Right. So England, up until through this period, you only had the quart-sized cards. And again, they'd resisted changing the rules until eventually, 1st of November 1899, the Post Office finally agreed to move to the UPU rules and a standard size 5.5 inch by 3 inch card. Now, bizarrely, it appears that this was due to lobbying by a gentleman called Adolf Tuck, who was a member of the Tuck family, who those who collect postcards will recognize the name. And he had been lobbying the post office for 4 years. So come when the post office finally promulgated the change in rules in November 1889, the Tucks already had 45 sets of cards poised and ready to go on sale. And this is one of them. 2 of the groups were a whole series of postcards of Thames views. This is Richmond Bridge, and also a whole series of views of London. And so this is July 1900, and this is a view of St James's Palace in London. This is a Raphael Tuck card number 3 for the London series, and this is relatively early. This is May of 1900. So there was this sudden change in 1900 where we moved to the card size that everybody knows and loves, but we still at this point have a vignette on the back, the writing on the back, the message on the back, and the address on the front. So you've only got, so some of the rules are still there, but some things have changed. Now, Raphael Tuck also had a Paris office, and so they also were poised to put these into the French market. And this is moderately late, 8th of December 1900, but nevertheless, this is series 30, number 6 for France. So these early cards I think these early cards are very nice. Lurking in the wings in France was another company called J. Levy and Company, who were photographic publishers, and they produced all sorts of things, but they didn't produce postcards until the Exposition Universelle in Paris in 1900, when they decided to start producing cards, and they were producing these photographic images. And this is a relatively early one. Well, no, not that early. It's November 1900, but this gives you a typical LL type postcard, and they became very significant publishers initially in France, but then in 1904, I think it was. Oh, hang on, I can tell you this because I have my crib sheet here. Right. Right. Yes, they sent their photographers over to England in 1904, and then were able to start putting postcards on sale from May 1905 in England, across particularly London and the south of England. And this was the big period of postcards taking off. So and the pictures got bigger. I like this one. You've got a lot of the typical features of London, the horse buses, particularly on this one. That's 1902. Now most of you who collect cards know about the divided back. I've got in February 1902 there, but there are suggestions it might have been January 1902. The decision was made by the post office to allow to put both the address and the communication on the same side and leave the back completely free for the picture. And you can see here, this space as well as the back may now be used for communications, post office regulations. There is another one which suggests that it's only actually valid for UK transmission at this point. And in fact, divided back is introduced progressively across countries, particularly in Europe, and of course all of the empire and all of the other European possessions across the world, and of course elsewhere across the world, from this decision in 1902. So, the earliest known one, I believe, is August the 25th, with a divided back actually physically used. And the other thing, of course, is that you'll notice the divided back is, of course, because people are so used to writing the address on one side, nobody's taken any notice of this, and they've just used it as they would normally. So, but certainly fairly quickly, everybody perked up and recognised the advantages, and of course started to put the pictures on the back. So this is a tuck postcard with a semi-coded message or semi-coded story, right? The postcard collecting craze seems to have started actually quite early. So this is July 1900, and as you can read here, I hope you haven't got another postcard like this. I wonder how long this craze is going to last. We shall get tired soon, I expect. Well, that was that, as it transpired, was completely wrong. And in fact, in France by 1900, I think there was about half a dozen magazines on postcard collecting, and certainly by 1905 there were a number available in the UK. The other thing that really helped was Raphael Tuck and Company, and they announced the first postcard competition in the beginning of 1900, right? And with very big prizes for the largest collection of Tuck cards sent through the post. And the first prize, as you can see, was awarded to the owner of 20,364 cards, which he'd somehow managed to collect in an 18-month period. And they did this over a number of years. So this really did contribute towards the whole postcard collecting boom. And here we have George Sims writing in the Picture Postcard magazine in 1905. And as he wrote, you enter the railway station and everybody on the platform has a pencil in one hand and a postcard in the other. In the train, it's the same thing. Your fellow travellers never speak. They have little piles of picture postcards on the seat beside them, and they write monotonously. And this seems to be what really did happen. Now, this is a classic example. It's a Victoria Station card. It's been bought by a French lady, and she's writing back about what she's going to be what she's doing and going to be doing in London, and that's quite typical of the this period with enormous sales. And interestingly, these are not that common, but post office actually had a system whereby if a postcard could not be delivered, they were gathered together. They were obliterated using this fairly heavy obliterator. So it hid both the message and the address. And then these were sold on to postcard dealers. And so this one is not deliverable here and signed by the postie. And that's been sold on to a dealer in due course. So it was a huge craze. People collected them. And I've just listed a few of the things that people collect, but there's a few: artists, buildings, humour, printers and publishers, places, people, theatre, films, transport. They produce so many cards about so many different things that you can collect almost anything. So I've just put a few of my sort of various collecting habits together. So this is a lovely one. This is the orderly boy. There was a series of London types, and the orderly boy was the lad who basically scuttled out into the road with his dustpan and brush to scoop up the horse manure and deposit it in bins beside the road, and that was his job. And as you can see, Bookman's London. My earliest admiration was the skill and courage of the belted boys in dark blue, who darted, stooping, right under the horses' noses, brushing dung from the roadway into their dustpan-like shovels, dashing, still doubled back to the bins at the curbside. So the wonderful thing I think about postcards is that these microcosms of London. So here's another classic, the London Omnibus. All of these are early star cards. So here we have a very early motor bus. So the London Power Omnibus Company had, I think, a couple of buses running in North London in 1904. Then we have slightly later designs of buses where they're moving to a more conventional shape, and something that's fully recognisable as we would recognise as a bus. And this again is classic, isn't it? In 1905, the London General Omnibus Company owned 7,000 horses, and they were all stabled in London. By 1911, there were none. They'd completely gone. They'd all been replaced by motor buses. Motor buses didn't need feeding. They didn't need looking after. it was a no-brainer when it came to it. But it was a very, very quick transition. And the same applied to the hansom cabs. In much the same period, the hansom cabs were replaced by the motor taxis. Publishing companies. There were quite a lot of companies. There were people who published, there were people who printed and did everything. But the London North Western Railway Company was an interesting one. They produced a huge range of cards, thousands of different subjects, typical ones of scenic pictures of areas that their railway would take you to. These were printed either by McCorquodale or by Raphael Tuck and Company. So we have a couple from North Wales, Aberglaslyn and Nant Mill. And many of these have these, well, all of them have in some form a crest somewhere on the card. Here's some scenes at well, I think wonderful scenes at Euston, the gentlemen with their top hats, and these are the American Expresses. These ran directly to and from Liverpool to connect with the steamers to America. And we get these wonderful glimpses. So this is relatively early. We've still got horse-drawn buses, carts, but here we have this little chap here on his tricycle, his delivery, a little lad on a delivery tricycle, and he's hitching a lift behind this horse and cart, and saving himself obviously a large amount of hard work. Other things, this is the Metropolitan Cattle Market. This replaced Smithfield in 1855 when the railways arrived in London. So instead of all the animals to feed the population of London having to effectively walk themselves into London, they could come in by train, and therefore Smithfields was in the wrong place, and so they moved the market up to up the top end of the Caledonian Road. So it was accessible from the King's Cross goods yards. So on market day, in excess of 15,000 animals could be traded at this market, and these were purely to feed the population of London, because there was no refrigeration or anything like that in those days. Whoops, and here, this one here is particularly nice because there's cattle coming down the Caledonian Road, going down to Smithfields for slaughter. Artists. There was a chap called Maggs, and he's really famous for his paintings of old coaching inns. Here's a couple of examples of old coaching inns, Cock and Magpie and Bishopsgate. And he produced, there were a series of 16 cards produced by Hancock and Cornfield of these various paintings. It's quite a nice set, I think. Mother, big postcard outputs. The Franco-British exhibition. Yeah, didn't say that well, did I? The site selected was at Shepherd's Bush, which became the White City, which became a very, very important focus for a whole series of exhibitions, from the first one, the Franco-British exhibition in 1908. And so we have a huge range of cards. I've just selected one here. This is the flip flap, and you get them cancelled. So there's a philatelic interest as well, because you get them cancelled at the exhibition. So this is a Valentine series. There's a huge number of these. You could have a huge collection just of the various exhibitions at the White City. Lots of hotels. produced cards or had cards produced for them. This is the top end of the scale, because this is De Keyser's Hotel, Royal Hotel on the Victoria Embankment. An enormous building. There we go. The original hotel was founded in 1845, and then it was replaced by this, with additional wings added in due course. And that's the postcard that presumably they gave to their, or was available for their guests. And here we have possibly just a light ending to this ramblings. A couple of rather nice Edwardian humorous postcards. This one's by a chap called Tom Brown, and he was a very popular cartoonist at the time. This is Pa arriving home to find spring cleaning in progress. And there's a Valentine's series one with a chap called Lawson Wood. And again, there's a whole mass of this sort of stuff. So thank you all for paying attention and not entirely going to sleep. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.